Hi, folks. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. This podcast will be unraveling AQA physics for A level. So, in this episode, we'll be focusing on magnetic flux density to start with. So, let's kick things off with magnetic flux density. So, imagine a magnetic field as a crowd of invisible lines passing through space. So, the density of these lines is how closely packed they are defines the magnetic flux density, which is denoted by the letter capital B. And the SI unit of magnetic flux density is the Tesla, which is essentially a measure of strength in this invisible crowd. So when current carrying wire sits in this field, it's going to experience a force, and this force is described via the equation F equals BIL, with I being the current and L being the length of the wire in the field. So this interaction is essentially the backbone of countless devices, from electric motors to instruments measuring the Earth's own magnetic field. So consider how the force on a wire changes with its orientation in the field. So what exactly happens when it aligns with the magnetic field lines? So in the practical, we explore this concept further. So we use a top-hand balance to see how the force varies with flux density, current, and wire length. So it's a hands-on way to see magnetic force in action. So now imagine a lone charged particle, like an electron, speeding through a magnetic field. It too feels a force. Now this force is going to be described as F equals BQV, where Q is the charge and V is obviously velocity. So I'll repeat, that is F equals BQV, and this force acts perpendicularly to both the velocity and the magnetic field. So it curves the particle's path. So it's the principle behind devices such as the cyclotron, accelerating particles to speeds for, research and medicine, etc. So, how does the direction of force change with the sign of the charged particle? So picture the paths of how a positive and charged particle and a negatively charged particle as they whirl through a magnetic field. So this brings us now onto segment 3, which is going to be magnetic flux and flux linkage. So diving deeper, let's talk about magnetic flux, symbolized by the symbol phi, which is the total number of magnetic field lines passing through an area, capital A, with the equation phi equals BA. So when we coil up some wire, every turn cuts through these lines, creating what we call flux linkage. As we rotate a coil in a magnetic field, the amount of flux it captures changes, leading to the equation for flux linkage, which is N phi equals BAN cos theta. So this change in linkage underpins the generation of electricity in generators and the functioning of devices like microphones. So, a practical insight. So through practical investigation with search coil and an oscilloscope, we can visualize how flux linkage varies with the coil's orientation in the magnetic field. A beautiful demonstration of physics in action. This now brings us on to segment 4, which is electromagnetic induction. So at the heart of many technologies lies electromagnetic induction, discovered by Faraday. It's the phenomenon of inducing a voltage by changing magnetic flux linkage, encapsulated in the equation epsilon equals minus n delta phi over delta t. This principle lights up our homes and powers electric generators. Essentially, when a coil rotates in the magnetic field, it induces an EMF described by epsilon equals BAN omega sine omega t. It's a fundamental concept in the generation of alternating current. So now we've got Lenz's law. So how does Lenz's law, stating that induced currents oppose the change that produces them, play a role in everyday devices from electric brakes to induction cooktops? So that's Lenz's law, which is the law that induced currents oppose the change that produce them. How could that play a role in everyday devices such as electronic brakes and induction cooktops? This now brings us on to segment 5, which is alternating currents and transformers. So alternating currents, essentially AC, flow. It's a current that's flowing back and forth, differing from one-way street of direct current, or DC. In AC systems, values like root mean square, voltage, and current become crucial. With the RMS current, we set that equal to I0 over root 2. And VRMS, which is the voltage RMS, equals V0 over root 2. So we can essentially calculate the effective power in AC circuits, which is a key concept in electrical engineering. So we're taking a deep dive now into transformers. So the purpose of transformers is to change the voltage of AC electricity without stunning efficiency. So thanks to a transformer equation, which is NS over NP, equals Vs over Vp. They enable high voltage transmission of electrical power over vast distances with minimal loss. A marvel of modern engineering. So to conclude, from a force on a current carrying wire in a magnetic field to the complexities of AC power transmission. Magnetic fields are a cornerstone of modern physics and technology. These principles illuminate the path from understanding the invisible forces around us to harnessing them in ways that power our world. So keep pondering these magnetic mysteries, and remember, physics is not just about learning equations, but uncovering the stories they tell about that universe. Thank you for joining me today on this episode of the podcast. Until next time.